Thanks, Carl. Calling to order the September 12th, 2024 meeting of the Elementary School Building Committee. This meeting is being televised and recorded by Stoughton Media Access for future broadcast. I don't think it's live. If I could call the roll, because we have several members who are participating remotely. And when I say your name, just say here. Joe Buckley told me that he has another engagement tonight and will not be here. Steve Cavey?
Here.
Diane Dolan?
Here.
Jake Dorr? Is he? Great. Well, I'll go through and I'll call him again at the end. Sandra Gropey? Joyce Husseini?
Here.
Katie Monahan?
Here.
Dr. Baeta?
Present.
TJ Recupero is present. Melissa Lynch?
Here.
Eileen Sprague? Tom Coulter, and sitting in for Tom Coulter's Fran Brutinetti?
Here.
Catherine Weiss?
Here.
Heidi Perkins?
Here.
And who else? Did I miss anyone?
Just ask Jake again.
Jake, are you there? Well, he's got an infant, so. We have a quorum anyway, so there being a quorum present. We have a few items on the agenda. Number one is approval of invoices. Eric, do we have an invoice package?
We do. We have two. Would you like me to read them?
Yeah, please.
We have the April.
Make sure you get your microphone.
Oh, thank you. Because this one goes through SMAC.
That one goes through SNAP, yeah.
He's here, he's having audit evaluation.
No worries. Thanks, Katie.
Okay. First, I have April invoice. We've got two items, both Vertex. First, feasibility study for $8,716.25. The second other, $7,852.12 for a total of $16,568.37.
Great. That must just about do it for Vertex, I would imagine.
On the April, and then we have
Then you have one remaining for
We have
the
the May
May.
invoice.
Right. Okay, great. So we will need to have another meeting at the very least to, well, we'll get into the,
May invoice is here. That is for the month of May.
has that gone out yet?
It has.
Okay. I haven't seen it. I don't know if anybody else has, but we can vote on it if you have it there.
Yeah,
So-
I did send it out last week. The April one would have been presented last month when we didn't have an SBC.
So the 16,568.37, that's April, or that's
Correct.
May?
The one I read was April, and then the one that I haven't read.
10,583.70. Okay,
That's
great. Okay. So 16,568.37, that is for Vertex invoices for April. Is there a motion to pay?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Actually, I have to call the roll on that because we have virtual people. So let me run through. Again, apologies. Joseph Buckley is not present. Steve Cavey?
Aye.
Diane Dolan?
Aye.
Jake Dorr? Sandra Gropey? Joyce Husseini?
Aye.
Katie Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Baeta?
Aye.
TJ Recupero, aye. Melissa Lynch? Eileen Sprague? Fran Brutinetti?
Aye.
Catherine Weiss?
Aye.
And Heidi Perkins. Did you get all that, Eric?
I did. I just missed the motion and the second.
It was motioned by Joe Viola, seconded by Katie Monahan.
Thank you.
Okay. And the next you have is Vertex invoice for May totaling out at $10,583.70.
So moved.
And I have the approval sheets that I'll circulate here. Motion by Dr. Baeta, is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, or further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Roll call.
Yeah, oh yeah, excuse me, roll call vote. Thank you, Joe. All right, roll call vote. Joseph Buckley's not here. Stephen Cavey.
Aye.
Diane Dolan.
Aye.
Jake Dorr. Joyce Husseini.
No.
Thank you, Jake. Joyce Husseini.
Aye.
Katie Monahan.
Aye.
Joseph Baeta.
Aye.
TJ Recupero is aye. Melissa Lynch.
Aye.
Eileen Sprague. Fran Brutinetti.
Aye.
Catherine Weiss.
Aye.
And Heidi Perkins.
Abstain?
Abstain. Great. That's a vote. I'll circulate these for signatures and submission. Eric, do you get these back? You-
Those usually go to Joyce, but I'll take
So
them.
yes,
Okay.
if you could please put them in the basket outside of Dennis's office with my former office, we'll make sure they get submitted.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can do that, TJ, at the end of the night, I gotta go back in my office now.
Okay, item 2, preferred schematic report submission. I think this is a recast agenda item to more of preferred schematic status, if someone can correct me, but, so why don't I start off on this? So, of course, everybody knows we had a debt exclusion vote on yesterday. That failed, a 55 to 45% vote. That was the largest vote turnout in, well, even larger than the high school, going back 30 years. When I looked at the high school, it was 30 years before we had that many people vote. But there are more voters now than there were during the high school vote. So now the question is, we were charged with, for MSBA regs, we were charged with coming up with a solution to the facilities issues with the South School, and that job remains. So I know Tim's online. Tim,
Yeah.
could you, so,
You want,
yeah, given our current status, why don't you run through what our options, I know it,
yeah.
no. Why don't you,
So, under the MSBA regs, we have 10 days. TJ, you were correct this morning about getting back to the MSBA with a plan, or at least respond to that with some plan of how the town would like to approach that failed vote. That doesn't need to be a thought out totally, but we do need to get back to them. So, and when, under the regs, you know, the board approval stays active for 120 days, 4 months. And that means that we can come back to the MSBA with the same project, but it can be revised. It can be modified in what I would call non-material ways. It doesn't require a redo of the ed plan or the space summary, but in non-material ways, it can be revised, and they will entertain that as an option later on in a revote, basically. So that 120 days basically puts us sometime toward the end of August, although that can be extended, and as you know, that's not a very difficult thing to get done, to end it. So I can tell you, just based on some conversation we had today with DRA, there is an option to come back with, and we have to do more work on this, but to find a way to reduce the cost There's a number of ideas that we've been throwing around. We probably want to test them out a little further before we got public with them. But that would be the option that the building committee could take, is to propose a revote, and the timing of that is something that the committee and the select board would have to decide in terms of whether or not that they would sponsor it, first of all, or allow it, the select board, and what that might look like. So that's kind of where we're at with this. There was the option of going back with, say, a South-only school is not likely going to be acceptable to the MSBA, because that's a too significantly different project from what we put in front of the board. And I confirmed that today in conversations, that likely would require going back in line, to the extent there was any interest in that, would require going back in line to the statement of interest process. So that's kind of where we stand with it. We do have a meeting in the works for early next week with the staff to talk this through in more detail, and I haven't received a note, at least I haven't checked my email in the last few hours, but I haven't received a note from them giving us times, but we are expecting to meet with the staff early next week.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions on that part?
I think I've exhausted mine, but I'm sure other people probably do. So, anybody else have questions for Tim on process mostly, but,
What would be,
I do. Are you able to hear me?
yeah, please, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So the question I had is that, as of right now, it sounds like you've already reached a conclusion that the reason this failed was strictly due to the cost of the project. Because it sounds like the solution you've come up with is to reduce the cost of the project. How did you arrive at that? Is there a possibility there might be some other elements that are worth looking into, even perhaps surveying, to try to understand what exactly people were getting in this moment?
Yeah, no, and I didn't want to I shouldn't mislead anyone. I wasn't trying to assume that was a reason. What I was saying is that the MSBA will allow you to come back with the same project. If you felt, if you could convince them that the reason that it didn't fail, that there's a likelihood of success in the revote. So no, they don't, it's not required that you reduce the cost, but that is an option. You can go in with a reduced cost project if you can show them in your mind that was one of the meeting your collective mind in the town, that was a part of the reason, and it might be more successful. Ultimately, what they're going to want to hear is a plan that will, and at least have a chance of being successful. So we would have to identify a reason, or like you just said, Steve, a survey or whatever, but we would have to, we can't just go and say we want to revote the project, and what's your chance it would be any different vote? We have to have an answer to that.
Absolutely. And I guess the other question I have is that there's only one precinct for which this election, this debt exclusion passed, and it was in precinct 3, which is, it takes place at South School. So, I'm still trying to process exactly what that might tell us, and I'm, I've got some sort of preliminary ideas about that. But I think actually doing an analysis of the results of the election, including getting voter extracts from the clerk's office, where we can dive into the data a little bit and see if we can deduce patterns from that, along with surveying people. So in some way might be useful, because if the problem isn't just cost, if it's really related to the fact that people on one side of the town don't want to pay for a new school for the people on the other side of the town, then to some extent it doesn't matter what project we brought forward, because that's going to continue to be the case. In which case, we have to perhaps examine some other solution, and that might not be something we could do anytime in the near future, but maybe could. a single complex for all, essentially close all except for, and just have this one, so that everybody's in the same boat. Unfortunately, Stoughton has not funded or built an elementary school in the 21st century. And the interests of Stoughton in 1960, 1970 might not really be the same as they are today. So I just want to make sure that we at least ask the question, try and find an answer as best we can. I want to see this succeed, obviously, but if the problem isn't something that this project will address, then coming back with a cheaper school isn't really going to help us.
Anyone else? Diane?
Actually, I think this question is for Carl. What could we do? This is on. What could we do to the building itself to bring down the cost? Or have you guys, actually, is that what you were talking about, that you haven't really sat and?
Not specifically, certainly, but, conceptually, there's limitations. As Tim mentioned, the MSBA approved an education plan, approved a space plan. So, the most significant way to reduce costs is to reduce the size of the building. We can't do that with the same grant and program. So we're somewhat limited in what we can do. But, there are certain ways of looking at the building delivery method that's right now built into the budget of construction manager at risk. It certainly has certain advantages. It reduces the owner's risk. It ensures the project meets the budget in a much more certain fashion. But it comes with a slight cost. That slight cost, though, if there's some magic number that if this didn't cost the town 66 million, but somehow at 60 million, maybe there are a few moves like that could bring it down that much. But maybe, as Steve says, at any number, it's not going to pass. There are finishes. There's always ways you can save a few dollars here and there on finishes. You pay for it in the long run. It's not what obviously was initially recommended, but if need be, there might be ways to do that. There's, the heating system of using geothermal wells. It's a wonderful opportunity to save you operating costs in the long run and get you rebates. Neither of those were factored into, the first cost of 66 million. But if we would eliminate the geothermal wells and still have heat pumps, but not based on groundwater, but on air source heat pumps, it might save some significant money, but in the long run, it's not a good deal. But again, there are a few ways to, within the MSBA's parameters, still reduce the cost somewhat. But it's not going to be, cutting it in half. It's not going to be cutting it by even, 20% or 15%. Probably 10%. Something might be achievable, and still with a project that you could put forth. There's certainly going to be drawbacks and trade-offs, but.
So we had talked about, today we had a working group meeting, meeting again on the 20th. I might as well throw that out there right now. Juneteenth is, of course, the 19th. That wasn't a great date. Usually we meet on Wednesdays, so 20th is a Thursday. And I think we said, Joe, 6 o'clock? If everybody's available, 6 o'clock on the 20th, next Thursday, we thought we'd give the project team some time to workshop some ideas and concepts and come back to the committee.
Would that be virtual as well?
We can do that virtually. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now in Florida, so.
Yeah, we could do that virtually.
Are we doing both or just virtual?
Why don't we just do virtual?
Okay.
If, sounds like
There's
this,
a lot of people away.
yeah. Why don't we just do virtual? Carl, that schedule's okay with you?
Yes, yeah.
20th at 6 PM?
At 6?
Yeah, 6 o'clock. That's a little earlier, too. seems to be the best opportunity. So, I don't know, Tim, did MSBA give you any indication about when they're going to be sending us their letter?
What do you mean, their letter on what, on?
Yeah, that says you have 10 days to get back to us.
We have to get back.
That's just their policy.
Oh, okay. So I only go by that. The 10 days I only know because I read I think in a couple other communities, the letter that they sent saying, you need to do X, Y, and Z in 10 days. But if that runs from the date of the vote, then yeah, the 20th works into our schedule. So I can tell you from my own part.
We are putting
Go ahead.
the meeting on the early in the week next week because we do want a more definitive feedback from them to the committee on the 20th, for the building committee. So that'll open up a lot of that discussion
Okay.
when we have that meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure, please.
is it possible, I hate to put work on your shoulders, but is it possible to have further discussions with the town manager and maybe Mr. Cavey and the vice chair around the financial aspects of this project? I'm not a fan of the fire station project as the finances were done as a personal taxpayer. As the superintendent, I know the long-term impact is less operational money is going to be available for schools, public safety, and so on. But, does the opportunity to borrow plus a debt exclusion make it more comfortable? Again, I don't support it, but my job in this case is to bring ideas to the table to look at avenues. I have concerns about the ed plan not being able to be carried out as outlined for a 50-year school. Not, a 50-year school that is probably going to reach very close to the 21st century based on how long we keep buildings open
Yeah,
for.
maybe we ought to put 22nd century education plan
Well,
in.
every time I hear the word 21st century stated, we're in 2024, I'm like, you're 25, almost 25 years into it, a quarter into it.
Yeah, I don't mind, I can reach out and,
And I don't think there's going to be a lot of love there, and I don't say that disrespectfully. I just think that is something that it seems in the prior town manager and select board was a way to sell the fire station because there are no grants, if you will. There's no MSBA, and that was the only hesitation I had on the building project as a voter. But I'd like to see all options at least looked at, and then this committee can make its decisions on what to send forward or not. I'm also concerned about the future of MSBA projects in Stoughton. And what I mean by that is, as you know, there's a history of having to wait a while, whatever that is. If the idea long-term would be, if this project had gone through, then the potential that as the high school is coming off, the middle school is coming on, if you will, or being looked at, there's millions of dollars to put into the middle school just to keep it at some type of day-to-day operation over the next 10 to 12 years.
right?
And so, and there's millions of dollars of upgrades at the South School, and in both situations, the catch-22 is the regulations on the percentage of the valuation, and then all of a sudden, all of the other things have to kick in, i.e. ADA compliance,
Yeah, we could-
i.e. fire protection, and so on, which then takes a $3 million thing, and like you said, at $3 million valuation, you're stuck at 1.3 to $1.5 million.
$3.9 million valuation, 1.17
Right.
worth of repairs gets us over the threshold.
Right, there isn't a single thing at the South School that can be done for $1.1 million.
Right.
If you think about that. Maybe a boiler type of thing, but you wouldn't do that without looking at probably one of the more expensive roofs in town because of the way it was built. And you wouldn't want to do that without a plan that really talks about the wraparound of that building, i.e. winterization, airflow, asbestos, and so on, and so on, and so on. So,
And we wind up with less school.
Correct, without any addition. And we know that MSBA is not going to move this project into an ad reno. That's not happening. You know, just look at the history
I
of
agree
MSBA.
entirely, yeah.
So then the other part then becomes, you know, I'm not sure, and I'll just say it, I don't think there is a magic number for a significant percentage of no voters that voted no. I don't think there's a number. It's just a hard no. And so the question becomes, how do we best articulate what is the number that makes people feel, quote, more comfortable? You can't just go back to the drawing board in the SOI process and tell DRA, no disrespect to DRA and Carl and your group, but you can't just say, well, put up 4 walls now and let's see if MSBA accepts it. That's not the process. There is no model schools. There is no model schools process. Why? Because there was a lot of challenges, legal challenges, around the procurement process. It wouldn't allow for people to go out and actually bid on the process. And that's why you haven't seen a model school built.
I didn't know that.
In years.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know why. I knew that they
That's the
hadn't done
challenge.
it
The
yet.
challenge is the procurement laws is one of the areas that has been a target. And so, is the model schools process, you know, truly available? No, it hasn't been. Pre-COVID, it wasn't. And again, Stoughton High School wasn't just picked off of a model school, even at that point. So I just think it's a 2-part operational, short-term, long-term of these buildings, and at the same time, the building committee looking and reflecting on what's the best next step. Because getting back to the beginning of the line with an SOI truly impacts capital planning and operations of an aging middle school.
It's a upwards of 8-year process once you get back in line too. That if you look at so I drilled down on all the schools that had debt exclusion votes that had failed and what happened afterwards, and they fall into 3 categories basically. There were schools that tried to get back in the program and are still trying. There are those that didn't try to get back into the program, and like Lincoln, for example, is building without the MSBA to the tune of, you probably know this, Carl, better than I do, but I mean, well beyond, with no reimbursement at all, but they're a wealthier community. And then there are schools that went back into the program, and because of the time that it took to bring forward a new program, a new project, and the rescoping of what they had before, ended up paying more in the end. So I would vote for the project that we proposed again in a minute. But if the sentiment of the voters is to taper down on the cost in certain ways, I think it's a lesser project, but I'm certainly willing to try. Not significantly, I'm not willing to give up on classrooms. I'm not willing to give myself, just myself, not willing to give up on the, I'm not taking public comment, but you can certainly call me and I'll talk to you personally. I'm very disappointed, by the way, Lisa. Your last ad was flat out lies. Flat out lies. Very disappointed. And I would give you every courtesy to speak before this committee and will in the future, just not tonight. You can call me. I'll give you my number. You can talk to me afterwards. And I like all of you people. I think you're valuable people in the community and you have a valuable voice. I think your last 2 ads, one where you were touting a tax increase that was incorrect, and you know that, and one where you were saying that this project has costs that were not included in the budget, and you know that's wrong. Those were flat out lies, and I'm very disappointed. I'd rather lose this on a battle of one opinion versus the other based on the better of the town, not on lies. Peter, you know me. I like you, I always will. No, I'm not taking, we're not engaging in discussion. You can talk to me afterwards. And you come back next meeting, have as much time as you need within 5 minutes because we'll have business. But I needed to get that off my chest. So when you raised your hand, Lisa, tonight, not tonight.
I didn't raise my hand.
You look like you did. I apologize then.
Come here to study,
Yeah.
to listen.
So I would vote for this project again in a minute. And the only reason I apologize that I said that. But these good people, everybody here, and our project consultants put a lot of thought into this project, and to lie about it was very disappointing. Very disappointing. Having said that, we'll move on. And you can speak next meeting. I promise you I will engage you and recognize you next meeting during public comment. But for right now, we have a limited period of time. We need to come up with a solution for the MSBA in order to unlock the grant monies that they've dedicated to us. That's our charge. You may have a different goal in mind for tonight, but that's where we're going. So, having said that, any other comments beyond the angry chairman? Melissa?
So I echo a lot of the prior comments, but I do believe that the building committee shouldn't be shouldering this all on our own at this point, because just where we're at. I also think it would be best to have on record the opinions of the public and the district staff and the town, just so we have that going forward and fleshed out appropriately. And another piece is, in light of the concerns with viability of the South School, to avoid situations where a local or a state agency comes in and closes it without warning, or worse, there is a tragedy that makes it unstable, the district really needs to explore a plan to avoid this happening without warning. And what would happen if the school does close, in conjunction with determining if the repairs can be made and improved and its viability. I just want to put that out there to talk about what is really at stake, where people are really concerned, what I'm hearing, because I think it's important that we think about that as well.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, I think it's really, really important to recognize that if, in fact, a situation were to happen at the South, besides being closed and potentially looking at PM school, in other words, certain groups of kids go to school after lunchtime and all that, we would probably be looking at modular sites. It would not be at the South. It's an impossible site with traffic to begin with. So you'd be looking at shifting those 300 students, 314 students plus staff to modular classrooms. Probably
two schools or just one?
Probably two schools. I mean, if you look at the expense of that, one school would probably be easier, but none of that is a situation where it's a long-term solution. It can't be another middle school solution where we just add to the DAR as modulars or add to the Gibbons as modulars and hope that they survive for 24 years like the modulars at the middle school have, with septic systems that are beginning to fail and all of that stuff. So we will, this summer, as an administration team, begin to take a look at some issues. I would tell you, without any scare tactics, that I have some concerns that have been brought forth in the past that I think need to be further addressed. Some are basic, voting day, because we've put bodies there, but that's not the same thing as our other schools. The parking lot concerns that we have. General stuff like that. The plan is you can't just pick up and go find $5 million worth of modulars. You got to go through an entire process of that, right? It's got to go to the proper officials, school committee approval, money just going out the door, and with no long-term plan.
I'm sure, Joe, there'd be site work to be done too. I mean, you just
Yeah,
have to drop it.
so that's another reason why the South School is impossible as a place to stay. And then there's the operational cost. I now am busing, guaranteed, 300 kids to two different schools at a cost that is easily $1 million, easily, especially at the cost. So there's a lot in play that the administration needs to provide as information, not only to the building committee, but to the policymakers and my bosses, the school committee, who oversee the schools, in deciding which road is some of the better roads. The other thing is we do have a master plan. Just this morning or this afternoon, I met with Joyce. She's on the way out, and Dennis is taking over. But looking at that master plan and going to DRA, who has been our consultant in that area, was last done in 2017, and saying, what is it to the penny to put money into this school that is not supported by MSBA, but literally take it down to the four walls. And then in some cases, some of those walls would have to come down. Or what is the better plan? And saying we're not going to do, quote, what I would call traditional modulars, but more of the latest upgrade stuff that's out there, or put an extension at the Gibbons, put an extension at the Daw. You would have no South School. It would be gone, right? So it's, we'd go through that process. I would probably say that whatever amount of money, let's, for the sake of argument, it's X. I don't want to throw out a dollar because then it's all over Facebook. But if it's X, it should include that all-inclusive price, because that would have to go as a debt exclusion. It can't come out of operational. You can't put $30 million into operational. And then lastly, a line item capital plan that we have started to work on that would come from that information on what do we have to do not only at the South School, but now we have a potentially longer, because remember, one of the consolidation reasons, and that's another discussion as well, by the way, consolidation, is the concern that this no longer takes a school off completely. This keeps now work to the Wilkins and the Jones and the middle school in whatever order the school committee decides and then the building committee decides. So we're looking at building after building after building, vote after vote after vote. But in between there, if we want to use some of the formula that's been discussed about, could we wait until one building is 3/4 paid for or all paid for before the next one comes down? Well, there's two problems. We just got a no vote, so we're not looking very good on the MSBA site in terms of where the place to go to do these types of projects over time. And number two, there's a cost. I mean, I don't think folks understand that the middle school project is well in excess of $200 million. Today. Today. Never mind 10, 12 years from now. So, and that school's envelope, is what it is. And we can do some things to it, but we're going to have to have some capital expenditures in order to be able to do that. It can't just come out of the maintenance budget. It's too big of a number. The other comment that I'll make about this entire situation and the building committee is, I think it's really important for us to have those conversations with MSBA about what truly are the next steps. What are they willing to flex with? What are they not willing to flex with? We know that every cost of the site development was in the budget, but we also know that the site development was costly. It's a part A, part B. It's not that, as you know, there wasn't money in the budget. There was. It's just costly in comparison to actually the construction cost. It's right on board with every other project of the X number of projects that we reviewed in the most recent MSBA information that we actually got from the MSBA of the current ones that are underway or just finishing up. The building committee cannot swap land, but does Fano Drive get put back into discussions? There's a cost, and the cost that those of us that were involved know that the cost is not realistic. Plus adding the work. So I think it's really, really important for our professionals to really have those deep discussions with MSBA about what truly are the routes that we can take with this. And then the building committee, your work, that I, of course, will support, and I believe the school committee may be joining you on the 20th as well. How do we change this? I mean, the politics of education are always interesting, but 600 votes in a local vote is not 100 votes. That's a lot of minds to change. And I'll be very honest, I don't think there is a number for a population of folks on this. I just don't think there is. It's a hard no. So the question becomes, what is that number? And how do we get 77% of more people to vote? At the end of the day, 23% of the people carried the day. I mean, that's good in a Stoughton election. I mean, those of us that have been involved in local politics know that we get people elected all the time with 3%, 6%, less than 10%. But and this was a good turnout, not the one I wanted, but the fact was there was a good turnout. And I don't know if the committee has any willingness to talk to leaders of the no vote and say, so what is the number? What's the number?
Or what's the issue?
Or what are the issues, what's the number? And say, okay, we hear you, so, and I don't want to use this phrase, I don't want to kowtow to anything, I want to find out more information. Because I have a really hard time that there is a number.
I'm happy to engage with them, Joe.
I know you are, and I am happy to do it as well. I have friends on that side as well that I've known for a long time. It's not personal, it's business. But at the end of the day, I don't think there is a number for a good percentage of 600 people that swung the vote.
I agree.
And 77% of the people didn't think it was important enough to do it. Sorry to be chastising the voters, but it's one of my biggest
I
concerns.
agree. Right, Diane?
It's all right. It's
I don't think any of the people, none of them are doing that. It's on cable. So there's no announcement in here? So you're not hearing yourself in here like you do at town hall or it's a town
You still
meeting?
want to turn it on.
It's just feeding straight in.
Update. I think, just like when they were doing stuff at town, remember the facelift and all of that? I think we should send a survey out. What did you vote and why did you vote? Or why didn't you vote? And the town could actually do that off their website. They have the ability to do that. They've done it before. And then it would be a combined effort between school and town to find out the real reason.
Happy to. I can talk to the town manager and see if he's willing to direct the IT director to put something online. I mean, it's useful information by all means,
Right.
so. Anyone else? Fran? Melissa?
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Steve? Yeah, please.
Yes.
Yeah, so I spoke with the town manager earlier today about exactly this question, and he is interested in looking at pulling together some sort of survey that might be able to help us find a path forward. So we can always, engage again in that conversation, just make sure I'm not misunderstanding something. But I think we can start that conversation tomorrow.
That'd be great. And if there's nothing else,
Peter, I just have one question.
yeah,
for
please,
you.
Melissa.
And thank you, Dr. Bayard, for all the calls, all the updates. So in the event, I think what I'm hearing is in the event that the extreme happens and there needs to be a moving on from the school for whatever reason, we're obviously planning for different contingencies. Is that another exclusion that we are going to would need to go after because it would blow out the operating budget?
Yeah, so
What does this really look like? Because I think people need to hear what this looks like for the town if, God forbid, that does happen.
Yeah, so it goes in a couple of different directions, right? The first one would be, what kind of a situation is it, and is it covered by things like insurance? So that's one situation. How long? Is it 30 days, 60 days, the entire school year? How long is that going to happen? So I've worked with insurance companies, and it's taken a year and had no gym available to elementary kids for an entire year, and had to come up with different ways to do that. But that was the process that we had to go through. We didn't have to go to town meeting. We didn't have to do any of that. If we have to go through the route of it's a significant amount of borrowing and so on and so forth, then it would have to be a school committee vote to do so, a select board to put it on an emergency special town meeting of some sort, town meeting then saying okay, and then the money's becoming available, and that entire time, if the school's shut down, you're probably running one of the elementary schools with something like 1:30 to 6 o'clock or something. You got to have to count for the day. You got to have a minimum of the half day, but you're still now losing significant half days. I had a wing in a building that caught fire, so that was an insurance claim type of situation. But we ran a negative because we wanted to get those kids, and this was high school, back into the building. So the kids ran a PM session for that group of kids, that grade, and then we moved it over, and we were able to get the kids back in about 8 weeks. The biggest issue at the South right now, which is actually a district issue that goes with this, is increased enrollment. I currently am being requested for a number of kindergarten positions. I have kindergarten classes already set for 24 and 25 for next year. Never mind the para situation, which is a whole nother thing. We're talking about those class sizes are extreme for us. We've never had kindergarten classrooms at that size. And so we're looking at our potential migrant situation as a way to financially support it if the state is going with the formula that it said it's going to continue to go with for this coming fall. But yes, the process is it's chaotic. We end up with a lot of delivery model issues, i.e. IEP mandates, speech pathologist time, contractual negotiations, or at least discussions around all of a sudden you're a teacher that's teaching from 1:30 until 5:30. That's a change in working conditions, Chapter 150E, like it or not. There is no emergency clause. We clearly learned about that during COVID, right? The governor never called a 150Es off the table. You don't have to negotiate. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. And then lastly, it would be the impact that type of a day has on the rest of the child's day. CCD, sports, activities, who's babysitting in the morning when they're not in school. It's a pretty complicated, it's more complicated for the younger kids than it is the older kids, to be quite honest. And that would be an extreme scenario, as per your question, right? Not a. I think the other scenario with that building that's concerning to me that I brought up to the building committee and the working team is if in fact we're doing some type of a renovation, without an addition, it's impossible. I mean, that whole entire front side of that building is not ADA compliant. And so the moment you hit that threshold, you're losing that entire staircase and front office area. And those offices then need to go somewhere else. So now you're actually talking about an addition on top of that, which becomes more costly because of foundations and heating systems and all of that. But really the other concern is, as someone who's worked in this field for a while, is our architects will give us all the information, our OPM will be on there, or clerk of the, whatever scenario we have, but the moment you open up that wall, you don't know what's behind it. And in a building from those ages, from that time period, I mean, I had 11 classrooms shut down for 8 months at the Yale Elementary School. You can look it up in Norton because of an asbestos situation. It's all enclosed. I want to make very clear, we're enclosed. But the moment it opens up, if something becomes a problem, this superintendent is not going to be willing to keep kids in that part of the building. I moved, I mean, my business manager was in my office for 8 months. We just had to close down spaces and create classrooms. So those are all extreme situations. So I don't want to cause that havoc in the public. But those are the things that we'll have to address if they do come up.
Thank you.
All right. So I have one last question for Tim, maybe Carl too, whoever can answer this. So we have now cost estimates probably date back to January. At what point are those outdated? And if we do revise things, do we just subtract out whatever we're revising, or do we need to get brand new cost estimates? Because we have nothing else in the budget, in the feasibility study budget.
Yeah, I think from, well, I'll answer and Carl can offer his, but I'm not worried about our cost estimate now for the project we have, because inflation is died down a bit in the industry. So it's not, because we may lose a few at the end of the world. I think in terms of the reduction, if we did do that, if we went in and made some significant revisions of some of the cost, we'd have to look at that a little more and see if we can scrape together something, because we would need to justify it. The reduction that Carl mentioned about which would probably be the single biggest possible reduction, reducing the premium for CM at risk. Yeah. We wouldn't. That's not going to cost any money. That's just a conversation with them about how much that is. anything more significant around the site, which, we've talked about, trying to simplify the secondary access and like that. That's something I think we would just need to see what we come up with. And then the finishes and all that is it's probably not something that we would have trouble getting, because they're really not elaborate. There isn't a major thing that can be done inside the building, so it's going to be more swapping out finishes and fenestration and things like that. And we would have trouble getting pricing for that. So that's a long way of saying that I don't think right now with what I see, we would be concerned about the estimate, being able to get accurate on that,
Okay,
some of these potential production costs.
great.
Carl, do you have any comment on that?
Just if part of your concern, TJ, was just by the delay in the
Yeah,
project.
exactly.
Are our cost estimates affected?
Right.
In a sense, yes. I mean, there's always escalation. There's escalation built into those estimates right now that anticipated a certain starting date. If that date were to move by, a couple months, that's one thing. Or 6 months or a year, that's significant.
Right.
But our estimators could tell us what that's worth.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
great.
And I didn't mean 6 months or a year, it's different. I meant if we move toward a vote within close to the 120 days, plus or minus.
Right. Mhm.
On mine, anyways, is mine different from yours? Yeah, it is. Okay. Thanks.
This is an old agenda.
Oh.
Doesn't matter, we all had bill paying and discussion. All right, thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
All right, so as Joe notes, we had public comment on the item 1 on the agenda. If there's no objection, I'd like to table that until the next meeting. Any objection? Great. Is there a motion to adjourn?
TJ, one more thing.
Sure.
We did skip over the minute exception. If we
Oh, the
could
acceptance
just
of
do
the
that very
minutes.
quick.
Okay.
From April 10th.
Yeah, I haven't reviewed those either, but
We'll move those to the 20th.
yeah, can we table those to the 20th?
Yep.
I haven't reviewed those yet either, so, great. Is there any other discussion under new business? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Second? I gotta take a roll call vote, don't I?
I'll do it for you. Fran?
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
TJ?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jake?
Yeah.
Diane?
Yes.
And Catherine?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, it is...
Heidi, did you get Heidi?
7:55. Yes, I did.
Oh. She's not on my list, I always have to
Yeah.
remember to
I
have her in.
did the name.